Hi everybody, this is Shannon from No Shelf Control. I have another video for you tonight and I'm very excited about it. My local library has recently put together a challenge for each month. They've recently published the March, April, and May challenges, and I saw them this weekend and was very excited about March and wanted to talk to you about it. So the March challenge is read a queer YA book by a queer author. Now, this excites me for a couple of reasons. One, I love YA. Every time I read a YA book, I end up liking it and wondering, why don't I read more YA? But that never ends up being where I go first. So having a challenge that points me directly at YA books is definitely a good thing for me, and I'm looking forward to that. The other thing about this challenge is it's a queer YA book by a queer author. Now, I have an interest in other lifestyles, in other cultures, in other heritages. I don't identify as queer, but I'm always enthralled by learning more about other people and how they live and what their challenges and successes are. So this gives me an opportunity to learn more about being queer and the queer lifestyle. The other thing is that I don't always know if an author is queer or not. You know, I don't think they have to publish their book and be like, I'm queer and I write about queer things. And I also don't think it's necessarily any of my business. But in this case, somebody at the library knows that these authors are queer and have written queer YA. And so that's interesting. It gives me some insight into what the person really knows about that lifestyle because they're living it. I don't think you have to be queer to write queer literature or queer fiction, but I think that it's something that shines a light on the topic differently. And I'm very intrigued to see, you know, how that goes. I knew TJ Klune when we read Under the Whispering Door and, it's not going to come to me. We just finished it and I just talked about it on the channel and it's just gone. Never mind. And the Blue Cerulean Sea, something like that. The Blue Cerulean Sea. We're just going to have to go with that. That's as close as I'm going to get. But the TJ Klune book, TJ Klune was actually very clear in his author's note that he is queer and that it colors his writing, that it is part of why he's motivated to write about queer characters. And I really loved that. But I don't think that I always have that insight when I'm reading a book that has queer characters. And I think that this will be interesting that the library has positioned it this way. So the library recommended 5 books to choose from, and I'd like to talk about those with you tonight. The first one is called The Magic Fish, and it is 256 pages. It is a graphic novel published by Random House Graphic, and it was published October 13th of 2020. And let me tell you a little bit about it. I love the cover because there's this underwater mer person who almost looks like a Japanese geisha swimming in the water or floating behind this character who's reading a book. So I'm interested to see how that will play out in the story, but gorgeous cover. And here's what the synopsis says. Tien loves his family and his friends, but Tien has a secret he's been keeping from them, and it might change everything. An amazing YA graphic novel that deals with the complexity of family and how stories can bring us together. Real life isn't a fairy tale, but Tien still enjoys reading his favorite stories with his parents from the books he borrows from the local library. It's hard enough trying to communicate with your parents as a kid, but for Tien, he doesn't even have the right words because his parents are struggling with their English. Is there a Vietnamese word for what he's going through? Is there a way to tell them that he's gay? A beautifully illustrated story by Trung Le Nguyen that follows a young boy as he tries to navigate life through fairy tales. An instant classic that shows us how we are all connected. The Magic Fish tackles tough subjects in a way that is accessible with readers of all ages and teaches us that no matter what, we can all have our own happy endings. Wow, that sounds really good. Very curious about the fact that he's gay and hasn't come out to his parents. And also that he's Vietnamese and has a bit of a language barrier with his parents. So culturally, what is that going to mean as well? So very interested in that one. Can't wait to see. And I also don't read a lot of graphic novels. So I think I finished one last year and I can't remember the name of it. If I think of it, I'll put it in the comments. But would love to find a graphic novel that I really enjoy. I think the pictures are beautiful and they help to tell the story, but it's just, again, one of those things that I don't naturally gravitate toward. So that is The Magic Fish, and that is written by Trung Le Nguyen. All right. The next one, and I have seen the cover for this one numerous times in other places. I didn't remember the name of the book, but when I pulled it up, I was like, oh, it's that cover. So this one is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and it's by George M. Johnson. And you have to love this cover. Look at this proud, stately human being with the flowers and feathers. I just think this is great. So this cover has caught my attention a couple of times before, and I'm excited that the book is being recommended by the library. All Boys Aren't Blue was published April 28th, 2020 by Farrar, Straus and Giroux, and it's 304 pages. Again, it's YA. Apparently, it also was nominated for a Goodreads Choice Award for memoir and autobiography. So that's interesting. Here we go. Here's a little bit about it from the synopsis. In a series of personal essays, prominent journalist and LGBTQIA+ activist George M. Johnson explores his childhood, adolescence, and college years in New Jersey and Virginia. From the memories of getting his teeth kicked out by bullies at age 5, to flea marketing with his loving grandmother, to his first sexual relationships, this young adult memoir weaves together the trials and triumphs faced by Black queer boys. Both a primer for teens eager to be allies, as well as a reassuring testimony for young queer men of color, All Boys Aren't Blue covers topics such as gender identity, toxic masculinity, brotherhood, family, structural marginalization, consent, and Black joy. Johnson's emotionally frank style of writing will appeal directly to young adults. I have this feeling it's going to appeal directly to me too, but that is All Boys Aren't Blue. Really excited to find out that this is personal, that it is a memoir and these are personal essays. Also interested to read about the intersection between being gay and being Black and what that means to this particular writer. So let's check that one out. I think the hardest part of this challenge is going to be picking one book out of 5. So the next one is called A Million to One, and it is written by Adiba Jagirdar. And again, I'm totally making these names up. I have absolutely no idea, and I don't know how to find out how to pronounce them. There's nowhere where you can go online and say, how do I pronounce this name? At least as far as I know. But Adiba Jagirdar, writing A Million to One. That was published December 13th, 2022, so just a couple of months ago, by HarperCollins, and it is 304 pages. Here's a little bit about this one. And of course, it's going to start with the author's name that I can't pronounce correctly. Adiba Jagirdar, author of one of Time's best YA books of all time, gives Titanic and Ocean's 8 makeover in a heist for a treasure aboard the infamous ship that sank in the Atlantic many years ago. A thief, an artist, an acrobat, an actress. While Josepha, Emily, Hina, and Violet seemingly don't have anything in common, they're united in one goal: stealing the Rubaiyat, a jewel-encrusted book aboard the RMS Titanic that just might be the golden ticket to solving their problems. But careless mistakes, old grudges, and new romance threaten to jeopardize everything they've worked for and put them in incredible danger when tragedy strikes. While the odds of pulling off the heist are slim, the odds of survival are even slimmer. Perfect for fans of Stalking Jack the Ripper and Girl in the Blue Coat, this high seas heist from the author of The Henna Wars is an immersive story that makes readers forget one important detail: the ship sinks. I love that. So it's set aboard the Titanic. Of course the ship sinks, but apparently that's not what this story is about and not what we're going to care about. So I am not familiar with the Henna Wars. I am not familiar with Adiba Jagirdar. And apparently the Henna Wars was one of Time's best YA books of all time. Apparently I need to go back and check that out. So, but the synopsis sounds great. 4 women, no reference really to what makes this a queer book. I assume some of the romance may fall along those lines, but there's no reference to this being queer YA in the actual synopsis. So we'll have to trust my local librarians for that part. All right, so let's talk about the next one. The next one is called Lakelore, and it's by Anna Marie Macklemore. Lakelore was published March 8th, 2022, so just about a year ago, by Fywell Friends, and it is 304 pages. I think the last book we talked about was 304 pages. That must be our lucky number today. So Lakelore, with this really interesting cover, these 2 people with butterflies all over them in the water. I think that's very interesting. I love the colors, the purples, pinks, and blues, and the sun behind them, but I'll be interested to see what that picture has to do with the content of the book. Obviously the lake, but we'll see what else. So the synopsis of this book says, it's not cooperating with me. Here we go. In this young adult novel by award-winning author Anna Marie Macklemore, 2 non-binary teens are pulled into a magical world under a lake. But can they keep their worlds above water intact? Everyone who lives near the lake knows the stories about the world underneath it, an ethereal landscape rumored to be half air, half water. But Bastian Silvano and Laura Garcia are the only ones who've been there. Bastian grew up both above the lake and in the otherworldly space beneath it. Laura's only seen the world under the lake once, but that one encounter changed their life and their fate. Then the lines between air and water begin to blur. The world under the lake drifts above the surface. If Bastian and Laura don't want it bringing their secrets to the surface with it, they have to stop it. And to do that, they have to work together. There's just one problem. Bastian and Laura haven't spoken in 7 years, and working together means trusting each other with the very things they're trying to hide. Okay, so I guess the cover photo starts to make more sense. There's this world that sort of is above and below the lake, and they are existing both above and below. So we'll see if they decide to work together and make it work, or how that pans out. Let's see. Next book, and I believe the last book that I was going to talk about that the librarians recommended for one of the 5 for this challenge, is called Last Night at the Telegraph Club. And you can see this couple under the light post here. And we've got a city that looks Asian in some way. So could be Thailand, could be China, not sure, but I bet we're about to find out. So this is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. Maybe I'm supposed to know what country the Telegraph Club is in, but I do not know. So the published date for this book is January 19th, 2021. So this is the oldest book on the list. It is published by Dutton Books for Young Readers, and it's 409 pages. So also the longest book on this list. And here's the synopsis. A story of love and duty set in San Francisco's Chinatown during the Red Scare. So it's Chinatown. I probably should have known that. That book, it was about 2 women and they fell in love with each other. And then Lily asked the question that had taken root in her, that was even now unfurling its leaves and demanding to be shown the sun. Have you ever heard of such a thing? 17-year-old Lily Hu can't remember exactly when the question took root, but the answer was in full bloom the moment she and Kathleen Miller walked under the flashing neon sign of a lesbian bar called the Telegraph Club. America in 1954 is not a safe place for 2 girls to fall in love, especially not in Chinatown. Red Scare paranoia threatens everyone, including Chinese Americans like Lily, with deportation looming over her father, despite his hard-won citizenship. Lily and Kath risk everything to let their love see the light of day. So queer fiction set in 1954 America in Chinatown. Yeah, not a conducive sort of scene for being queer. So really interested to see how that plays out. Also, like the historical bent here. I would love to learn more about the Red Scare. And I love the 1950s, 1960s as a time period in general. Love the 20s, love the 50s and 60s. We'll be really interested to check this one out. So those are the 5 books that my librarians recommended for their challenge, which is read a queer YA book by a queer author. So we know a little bit about each of the authors in this case simply because they've been nominated in this category. And we have the opportunity to check out some more YA fiction that has queer characters and a queer storyline. So I'm excited. I hope you are too. Telling you about this at the end of February, so you have time to pick a book for March if you'd like to participate with me. I will be picking one. I don't know which one yet, so I will have to come back in another video and tell you which book I chose for this particular challenge, but I'd love to hear which one you're interested in and which one you're going to read. So I'll be back soon and we will talk about books more. I hope you have a great week. Thanks.